It's Wednesday, the 16th of August, 2017 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Student Affairs Live, the online learning community for student affairs educators in higher education. I am your host, Heather Shea, broadcasting live from my professional home, Michigan State University. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. On today's live broadcast, I'm talking with a panel about partnerships to promote student athletes' academic success on campus. Before I introduce my guests, I need to give a quick shout out to all the folks who make these free webcasts possible. Student Affairs Live is a part of our Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge. And thank you once again to my friend and colleague, Alex Sylvester, for monitoring today's back channel. If you have questions for our panelists, please tweet us at Higher Ed Live, and Alex will do their best to incorporate them, send them along to me, which then I will incorporate them into today's discussion. You can join me and my brilliant friend and co-host Tony Duty live on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. And you can also view all of the past episodes of Student Affairs Live on our channel at higheredlive.com. Today's episode is made possible by ACPA, College Student Educators International. Support for Student Affairs Live is one of the many ways ACPA provides innovative professional development. Visit myacpa.org to discover other personal and professional development opportunities. And if you have not yet registered for or submitted a program submission for the 2018 convention in Houston, you can learn more about how to do both of those things by visiting the link that we're tweeting out now. Higher Ed Live is also produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. Do you need help getting full buy-in for a website redesign? A higher education website checkup with M. Stoner will provide objective feedback and give you and your team a clear roadmap for improving your site. We are tweeting out a link shortly so you can learn more. All right, now on with today's episode. So today we are talking about student athletes and supporting student athletes. And I want to name that given the current deplorable racist violence occurring in our world, there are certainly other conversations that we could be having today. So I want you all to please know that we are planning to address the events of this past weekend in Charlottesville on a future episode of Student Affairs Live. So please stay tuned to our hashtag for more information on that next episode. So today's episode, we are going to be talking about how we in student affairs need to understand the unique needs and then work in partnership with our colleagues in athletics to support student athletes. Joining me for the discussion is a large panel of individuals who work with and alongside student athletes in several different capacities. And I'm grateful to one of the panelists and guests, D.T. Henry, who worked closely with me to identify our panelists and shape our discussion today. Thanks so much, D.T. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Preston Murphy, was called away on a last-minute recruitment trip and is unable to join us. So we will miss his input as well. So we're going to have everyone introduce themselves. And as you introduce yourself, I'd like you to tell a little bit about your role on your campus. And if you were a student athlete or played a sport as an undergraduate, what sport did you compete in? So DT, how about you go first? Welcome.
How you doing? I am Dr. Dario D.T. Henry. I'll pronounce like Ariel, the Little Mermaid, but with a D. And I am an academic advisor for criminal justice, sports management, and homeland security. For 2 years, I was the academic advisor to the football team as we were a junior college program, but we recently transitioned to Division III. So I'm transitioning to a different role, but I'm still working with athletes. And the sport that I played in college was college football.
Great. Welcome. Gina, how about you go next? Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gina, and I'm an athletic academic support specialist at Northeastern University. And in undergrad, I played club ice hockey at University of Vermont.
Excellent. Mariah, welcome.
Hi, I'm Mariah Whitbread-Hardman. I'm a learning disability specialist at Northeastern's Disability Resource Center. I did not play sports, but I enjoy supporting our student athletes.
Great. Katie. Hi.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a learning disability specialist and the technology coordinator for Northeastern University's Disability Resource Center. I didn't play sports in college either, but I do enjoy working with and supporting our student athletes.
Excellent. Derek, welcome.
Sorry, I had trouble with my mute button there. Hi, everyone. Derek Viveris. I'm the Director of Athletics at Bristol Community College. Entered my 8th year here, and I played baseball at Southern New Hampshire University.
Great. Welcome. Scott, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heather, for the opportunity. My name is Scott Herko. I am an assistant professor of sports management at Central Michigan University. I am also a consultant to the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, which is based out of Miami, Florida, the organization that is considered the conscience of college sports.
Great. Welcome, Scott. Did you play sports as an undergrad?
I did not. I'm a high school athlete, but did not play at the collegiate level. No.
Awesome. And my only claim to connection with sports is that my brother was a walk-on on the swim team. And I was never an athlete, but I enjoy watching sports. So this is an important topic for all of us in student affairs. But one of the things I want to start with first is talking about your all's roles as advisors for athletes. So DT, maybe one of the things that you can start with is, what are some of the biggest challenges that face you all as advisors? How do you get into this work? And then what kinds of skills and competencies do you feel that folks who work with student athletes need to gain and acquire that they may not possess right now?
Okay, so one of the things that I find is a challenge is resources and partnerships, and you want to find the best model that works for your institution. So sometimes you'll have athletic advisors in a department versus academic counselors in an advising center. Other models have faculty advising. So when you work with athletes, you want to find out what model works best for you. You also want to include some other support services such as, tutoring, writing centers, wellness departments. And so instead of working in individual silos, you sort of have cross-campus collaboration. We know all systems need the right people to make it run. So you want to make sure that you have people on your staff that don't have these preconceived notions and stereotypes that we've gathered from social media influences about athletes, some of the common rhetoric about athletes and not being motivated to do school or only wanting to go professional. Some of the other challenges are dealing with academic clusters and developing pathways. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but developing pathways for athletes to choose majors that they're actually interested in versus majors that will free them up for sports activities, So certain majors like teacher education, nursing, STEM, all those that have labs in the evenings don't always work well with an athlete schedule. And then another challenge as an advisor is managing the many hats that you wear. So some days you're a mentor, other days you're motivating, some days you're a time management strategist, you're a mediator for faculty and student concerns, you're a policy explainer. One way to look at it is you're like a primary physician and you refer your patient to different departments. So you want to make sure that that you know about the different departments. Some days you're a relationship builder. So these are some of the challenges that advisors have. Also getting students to self-advocate and understand that not all communication has to go through advisors. Sometimes, you could talk to a professor on your own and you don't necessarily have to go through me as your advisor, but students often wait for me to make that initial step to talk to, other departments and other staff members. As far as getting into this work, depending on the model at your school. So like I say, some models have faculty advising, some have centralized advising. But as far as education and majors, so we know in our department, in my school, we hire master's degree advisors. Some schools hire bachelor's degree advisors. But if you're going in the master's degree world, you want to major in something like student development, student affairs, higher education counseling, student success, something along that area. I'm pretty sure some of the other panelists may have come from some other areas. But also, if you volunteer or you intern in the academic advising office or in the athletic department, you sort of can work your way into it from there. I would also go on the website for M4A, look at some job descriptions, and then work backwards from there. As far as some competencies and skills that athlete advisors need to have, you want to understand the changing demographics of your student athletes. Not all students come from the same background or play college sports for the same reasons. So with that in mind, advisors must be aware of serving the holistic student. And that includes recognizing that their identity as an athlete is real. And you can't expect them to turn that off because they have an opportunity to obtain a college education. So college athletes need a holistic advising too. So some of the things that I do when I'm training advisors is I get them to shift their language. So we have to decrease some of the 1% rhetoric that goes on in society right now, where only 1% of athletes make it to the pros. We know that, they often know that. But if you shift that language a little bit, instead of when an athlete talks to you and say, I want to go pro, and let's say something like football, and you say, only 1% make it. Shift that language and ask them, well, what's your second career going to be? Because when you do something like that, you honor their first commitment, but then you open their minds up to what's going to happen afterwards. And so a lot of times I see faculty and staff members say the 1% conversation, and the students immediately tune you out because they believe you don't believe in them. And we don't do this with other majors. We don't talk to business majors and say, most businesses fail, or the first business fails. We don't say that to tech startup entrepreneurs that, you may not make it on your first business try or your first business attempt, but you want to keep going from there. So we don't have that language of discouragement. And then to wrap up a little bit, you want to have some common language that athletes understand. So when you're talking to them, you want to use terms like endorsements, sponsorships, make it relevant. I advise business professors to use NFL contracts when talking to athletes or teaching them in class. And then as advisors, you want to have a repository of examples to use. So when you're talking to athletes about using their education and their athletic ability, you got to have some examples. So I always use Charles Woodson, who has a wine company, but played 20 years in the NFL, or Brian McFadden, Santana Moss, all who have. Santana Moss just recently got his master's degree in business and is a sports anchor, and as well as Brian McFadden. And then know the financial resources of your institution. Not all institutions give out the same type of scholarships. You have head count sports that are considered to be revenue producers, and then you have equivalency sports. So scholarships are a little bit different. And then I would say become involved in N4A or NACADA, and that way you can get some information about advising or getting into that role.
Great. So it sounds to me, it also then kind of takes a village to support student athletes on our campuses. Mariah, can you talk a little bit about how, there might be some pros and cons of extending athlete advising to include faculty, peers, alumni, and then how we might effectively do that, build those networks of support?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the cons. In terms of cons, one of the cons would be if you try to do training for advisors to help, say, a student athlete advisor and be a resource for student athletes, if that training were incomplete or you did a training and that was it, you might have some misinformation or some compliance issues come up. Student athletes have more regulations around what they can and can't do. And you don't want, say, an advisor saying, oh, sure, drop classes, and then suddenly they are within compliance. So really, I like to think of it more as a partnership. And that partnership should go on beyond the initial training. There should be a lot of back and forth and willingness to communicate. Good example of this group here, my colleagues, we do a summer bridge program. Gina is a student athlete advisor, and Katie and I both work within the Disability Resource Center. We just happen to be in the Disability Resource Center, but we have a lot of information about study strategies and success skills. And then Gina has a lot more information and understanding of our students in terms of student athletes' needs and backgrounds. So that partnership goes on beyond our bridge program. Actually, we communicate all year long. And then this group actually goes to other advising groups. We went to our general studies program and shared what we were doing to see where there was overlap and where maybe they could cover more of the information and we could cover less of that information and focus on a different area for our student athletes coming in. So I think the partnership should be ongoing. It should be between multiple advising groups, so not just academic advisors, not just student athlete advisors, but even things like disability centers and counseling centers that can help support students overall.
So it seems to me, also based on some of the articles that I read, you know, that student athletes are under increased demands and pressure because of their sport, but because of time management issues, which you mentioned. Katie, can you talk a little bit about how this might increase issues around mental health concerns and, you know, what you all are doing at Northeastern to help address some of those issues?
Sure. So we're seeing that all students who have many demands on their time and have a lot of commitments, that just creates a lot more pressure for them. We're asking really young students in a lot of cases to plan very tight schedules and prioritize all the different responsibilities that they have. So that's a lot of executive functioning, and students who are 17 and 18 years old, their brains are just not developed to handle that quite yet. For some students who are naturally a little less adept at executive functioning, it does put even more pressure on them. So at Northeastern in particular, we're seeing higher and higher academic standards, and students are starting to put a lot of pressure on themselves to achieve high academic scores. When they compare themselves to their peers' academic performances, we're also finding that D1 athletes just don't have 10 hours a week to study. And that can lead to a lot of self-recrimination, a lot of anxiety and depression about that. So a lot of what we do, especially being in the group that we are reaching out to student athletes, we work very hard to destigmatize resources like disability services right from the beginning. And we're starting to see older students who are coming to us with issues, students who we might have caught when they were incoming freshmen. And they were in our class over the summer, and they say, oh, we remember, you guys taught this class. It seems like it wasn't a big deal that you were from the Disability Services Office. They feel much more comfortable coming to us, which allows us to refer them out to more and more resources.
Great. So Derek, you're an athletic director at Bristol Community College. And I'm sure because of your role, you have experience interacting with athletes across many different sports and levels and interests. And so could you speak a little to the big picture here? You know, in your experience, what are some of the common concerns facing student athletes and some themes that maybe you have engaged in over the years in terms of supporting student athletes?
Sure, yeah. I think at our level, at the community college level, we're probably seeing some different themes maybe than you are at Northeastern. We have a very diverse population of student athletes, diverse in culture, diverse in background, diverse in academic needs. And we have a lot of students coming in and they're hearing this terminology, advising center, and everything else that comes along with it for the first time. And so it really takes a lot of explanation, maybe some hand-holding early on in the process to really move them along and get them comfortable on campus. One of the big things that we see is trying to teach them time management. We have student athletes here who have just graduated high school. They're 18 years old, but they have to go and work and support mom and dad. Or we sometimes we'll have a 22-year-old parent on a sports team here, and it's not unusual at the junior college level. So we need to find ways for them to be successful, both academically and athletically, and to be able to have the resources and be able to be a connection with advising or tutoring and any other support services. It's important to be able to connect them with those.
Great. Scott, I think we often talk about student athletes as this kind of monolithic group, but obviously there's vast differences based on institutional type, the sports that they're competing in, the major that they might choose to study, prospects for professional sports careers, whether their status as a scholarship student, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about some of the differences and the challenges of both grouping them all together as well as maybe individually trying to meet the unique needs of all of these different categories?
Well, Heather, and I appreciate Derek and Derek's conversation, because there's over 400,000 athletes that compete in the NCAA. Okay, there's 400,000, but let's not forget the junior and community colleges, the NJCAA, the NAIA, and when you start looking at these other associations, we're talking about there are well over 1 million college athletes in the U.S. that participate. Now, obviously, football and basketball players get the most attention because they're the most popular sports in America. But for instance, at the most competitive level, which is what we call the FBS, the Football Bowl Subdivision, which is at Michigan State or Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, they have anywhere between 16 and 30 sports. So you're talking anywhere between 400 to almost upwards of 800 athletes on a campus. Athletes are people too, all right? And let's not forget that. So when they choose a major, often they're going to choose it with their friends. So it's often written in the literature that the issue of clustering. So you have a lot of athletes that might cluster into a major like communications, or they may cluster into a business major. We don't see very many athletes who are STEM majors at the most competitive level because it's challenging with labs. I think that's an issue that can be well identified and dealt with by student affairs professionals working in conjunction with coaches to make sure that, listen, if this student wants to be a pre-med or a dentist or a engineering student, let's make sure that that student has an opportunity to actually become engaged in the labs that are necessary to be successful in that field. It's a challenge. When you talk about professional sports, let's be honest. Okay, let's be honest about it. And DT talked a little bit about that, but most athletes are not going to be professional. Now, if you're going to talk about athletes, college athletes, they're all going to raise their hand, think they're going to go pro. But we only have 3 or 4 professional sports that are in America, okay, that are a venue for the college game. And we're talking about football, basketball, baseball, and hockey, really. And so most of these athletes that don't compete in those 3 or 4 major sports, they're not going to go pro because there isn't a professional opportunity for them. You're not going to see professional field hockey players. You're not going to see professional volleyball players. Very rarely do they make it to that level, and they're typically through the Olympics. Okay, so let's think about athletes as a subset of students that do have particular needs because they have to go to practice and they all want to win. Athletes don't compete to lose; they compete to win, and that means there's an additional time demand that's on them. And if you take that time away, they're still going to try to win. You might think that athletes don't want to practice, but they do because they want to win. And taking that mindset and considering that as a unique type of student is important. And it doesn't matter if you compete in the NCAA or if you're going to compete at the community college. No, athletes want to win. And that's an important mindset of development that's unique to that type of student.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lens there. DT, do you have some thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the the academic issues that are a bit different. So, you know, if you're at if a student's at a junior college level, they're trying to get to a Division II, Division I school generally. So they're at that school for a different purpose. They're trying to reach a certain type of GPA. They're trying to mature as an athlete or get gain some more skills, become more developed. So their academic issues may be different from a student that's just dealing with time management, or a student that is now or may have been at a FBS school and then went down to a junior college school and is now trying to get to another school. So depending on the Division I, II, III, NAIA, or junior college, the academic issues are a little bit different just because of the nature of the school and what the student's end goal needs to be. So, you know, at junior college level, I dealt a lot with students that are trying to get to Division I. So the academic support may be a little bit different.
Derek, as an athletic director, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think something to DT's point there is where you have a student athlete who may be participating for different reasons than another at the junior college level. And that's where I think the conversations with either an athletic director and student athlete, the coach and the student athlete, advisors, whomever, maybe it's a team effort. But I think those conversations need to start taking place and to figure out what that student their goals are. And I think really that's what it's all about, is helping our students achieve their goals. If it's to get an associate's degree, if it's to go on and be a Division I student athlete, whatever it is, we should be there to find out what direction they want to go and help them achieve that.
So it sounds like kind of what we're talking about is motivation and like why they're at their institutions, what their end goals are. And when I was doing some preliminary research for this episode today, I found that largely the literature was clustered around three themes. One was around preparation, you know, and the kind of concerns that people had that athletes were coming to our campuses less prepared. So I'd love to talk about that. Motivation definitely being one of those things that we've been chatting about. And then also engagement. And when I think about engagement, I think about engagement in not only their athletic endeavors, but other aspects of campus life. So Gina, when you think about the suite of services that colleges and universities provide to student athletes, where do you feel like we should be putting resources among these three kind of priorities or needs that students have?
Yeah, I think I'm going to touch upon the preparation, motivation, and engagement first. I think those are three really, really interesting components. I know that at Northeastern, we see a lot of times that motivation and engagement can overcome being a little bit underprepared. We have a general studies program where the majority of our student athletes will be admitted to. And we actually did a study last year where we tracked our most underprepared students, which were deemed exceptions or special admits by the university. So we looked at just those. I believe it was 10 student athletes, and we rated things like engagement and preparation to our meetings, as well as what resources they were using. And I think, as everyone expected, those who were more engaged and utilizing all of their resources ended up doing better. And a lot of times they did better than even the other, maybe more prepared, or students that had better test scores that were still in the general studies program. So still not quite at that level, but we're still had higher scores than those students we were looking at. But you know, I find that if they're motivated academically, that makes a big difference. So in terms of resources, I think putting it into people on campus can be really helpful. And I think, like we've talked about, making those relationships and having liaisons within different student affairs offices that you can work with is really helpful. Like, we have peer tutoring on campus, but we also do tutoring within our SAS office, and it's helpful. We love to use peer tutoring, but they just don't always have the most flexibility that the student athletes need with all those time demands. So we are able to let our tutors tutor the student athletes basically at any time of the day that they want. So they can tutor at 10 p.m. if they want, and that tends to work out really well for them.
Yeah, I think that's actually on-demand tutoring is got to be a trend across campuses right now, because students don't necessarily study at the between 8 and 5 when most tutoring centers are open. Scott, talk to me about these 3 themes a little bit from the Knight Commission report. Like, what do we know about institutional resources towards motivation, engagement, and then about preparation?
Okay, well, the Knight Commission is a unique group, okay? They're made up of individuals who have a interest and a passion to make sure that the college remains in college sports, okay? So we see the vast amount of monies at the highest level that's being spent on palatial stadiums and whatnot. And we get carried away with that, I think, because everybody likes football and basketball. And we've got big, beautiful stadiums to go to every Saturday. And we see it on TV. And it's great fun. But where the Knight Commission is coming from is, again, to make sure that the college remains part of college sports, so that we're not moving away from a commercial nature of athletics, which is professional, but rather we see it as a something that's healthy. Sports, they are healthy, okay, and fun for the community. And so where the Knight Commission comes in is they've been looking at ways to make sure that some of the funding that's being spent in college sports is not overblown with respect to the perspective of what it really should be about. It's part of the campus environment, part of our experience, whether you're at the Division I level, the Division II level, the Division III level, or whether or not you are at the community college level, like where Derek's at. And the point being is that let's not forget what the role that sports plays in our lives, okay? And that it should be a fun experience and not out of control. And so part of the concerns of the Knight Commission over the last 20, 30 years, and the different iterations of the commission, has been to make sure that we don't lose that sense of focus. And this is where you all come in as student affairs educators, is that making sure that athletes have the resources that provide them to have a wholesome college experience, so that we're not going to a stadium just to witness some massive event, but we respect athletes for who they are and who their identity is as individuals. And that's where the Knight Commission has a role to play in helping to provide some advice and educators in creating policies to make sure that we don't lose focus of what the athletic experience is supposed to be about. The commission, I think all the members are, or most of them are former college athletes, very high profile college athletes. David Robinson, Myron Roll. These are individuals who've been very successful in the professional ranks. But they have a passion to make sure that we're not losing sight of taking care of the athletes as people, as students. And so some of the reports the commission works on is making sure that that the identification that we have of athletes isn't lost in the fact that they're people too. The college athletes are people too. So they may have, like DT was saying, they may have different motivations, different reasons why they're going to college and playing and swimming or playing football or playing baseball. They may have different motivations. Well, they all want to win. Don't get me wrong. They want to win. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they're provided the resources able to navigate and to participate as a full member of the student body. Okay, just like anyone else. But because of the pressures on, particularly the highest level, the pressures to win, stadium which has 100, that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. It's a lot of pressure to put on anyone. So, you know, okay, so we might have football players that have different pressures than a swimmer or a field hockey player, okay? But at the end of the day, they have one thing in common. Um, uh, they're students.
Yeah.
And that's where the Knight Commission comes from, and trying to maintain that focus that let's see them as students first and as athletes second. And if we can do that and understand the pressures and the challenges that they go through, we can help them navigate to be successful members of contributing to the community in the future. And that's kind of where the Knight Commission comes in, and trying to help set policies for the NCAA to make sure that we address these issues. I'll share this with you. What's interesting is, and this just came out yesterday or 2 days ago. So the NCAA is beginning to dive in to looking at creating a policy relating with sexual assault. Okay, and this is extremely important because the Knight Commission the NCAA has always let institutions deal with legal issues. Okay, they'll let that's up to the institution. We have 5,000 institutions in the United States. Each of them are different. So trying to set a policy across all the institutions dealing with some legal environment is a challenge. Okay, it's a challenge. And you think about, we have 50 states in the union. Every state has different laws. So it's a challenge. But the NCAA is beginning to get pressure from institutions and from Congress to deal with some very important issues, which is outside of their normal work. Mm-hmm. And because NCAA typically deals with what's done on the playing field and academic issues of compliance. But now the NCAA is pressure from Congress to change these, or actually to create sexual assault.
Great. So we're going to tweet out a link to the Knight Commission so that folks can read a little bit more about that. But Derek, I want to bring it back to talking about student affairs and athletics partnerships. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that you as an athletic director within your institution have bridged these kinds of, potentially divides? And maybe that's just in my own mind, but talk a little bit about maybe what we should be doing more institutionally to create some structures to support student athletes. Oh, you're on mute still.
Thanks.
Okay.
So when I arrived at BCC back in 2010, over the next couple of maybe 2 or 3 years, we were seeing a lot of turnover in our student athletes, and they weren't persisting, they weren't retaining, and so we were looking into why was that happening, and a lot of it had to do with student athletes becoming ineligible, or just not having some type of guidance or structure. So we looked into ways that we could better service our student athletes from that standpoint. And being a small athletic department, not having a whole lot of resources, you have to reach out. You have to reach out to other departments on campus in order to make that work. And we started with adding, I shouldn't say adding, but we started working with the advising department, and we were given an advisor to take that lead with our student athletes. So it started there, and then it moved on. It grew. It grew into adding a college success seminar course that we've been doing for a couple of years now for all first-year student athletes. And it's the same format as any other CSS that we have on campus, but we tailor it to a student athlete. We talk about time management of a student athlete. We talk about how preparation for contests can be translated into preparation for a test or homework assignments, and things of that nature. So that's really helped us in the partnership. And we've also started a student athlete orientation, because there are different needs. Student athletes have different needs, different requirements than the general student body at times. So it's something that's grown over time with this partnership with advising, but it takes a village. It really does. And when we say we really mean we. We don't just mean athletics. We mean the entire college community, because really we can't be successful without anybody else here. We also work very closely with Office of Disability Services. I'm not sure if the NCAA has something similar, but we have a policy, a bylaw in our governing body that allows certified disabled learning student, the ability to have full-time status with below 12 credits. And so there's a lot, we work very closely with our ODS office from the time of that application through that student's career at BCC. So those partnerships on campus are so important to really the student success, the department success, and for everybody to move forward and achieve their goal.
So one of the ways that student athletes often engage with student affairs is through student conduct issues. And I'm putting that out there only because I think that that's a common perception of folks in student affairs, that it's when athletes are behaving badly. But this may be also a myth. And yet I know that athletes are under increased scrutiny because of the high profile nature of their presence on campus. Can you talk about how you as athletic director work with athletes, setting expectations, talking about the fact that they're role models on campus, and then partnering with student affairs around student conduct?
Sure. So we meet with all of our athletes prior to the start of the year, and we've developed a student athlete handbook. And that handbook references the college code of conduct, the college student handbook, and so their expectations are laid out right from the beginning. And we also empower our coaches. We empower our coaches to handle disciplinary issues that happen out at practice or games, things of that nature, so that they start to see the structure that, okay, I can't get away with anything I want, right? So we start that right from the beginning. And one thing that I've been saying a lot lately or recently to our athletes is that you have an opportunity to make a major impact in your 2 years here. Make sure it's a positive one, and to respect what's happened, expect the history of the program, what's going on prior to your time here. So we try to really lay that out there at the beginning, and then when any issues come up that have to go to our code of conduct officer, that person may come to me, ask me questions, but really it's in their hands, and we try to overcome that situation.
DT, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do with the football team when I was just advising them is I try to use their desire to be professionals to talk to them about their conduct. So if you're out there, you get a chance, you should take a look at the HBO special NFL Giants. And it talks about the 10 NFL scouts for the Giants. And when they go through this show, they talk about how much information they really find out about students as they're looking at them for the NFL. So what I like to tell players is check your social media now. The NFL knows that you are in college right now. The pro scouts know that you are here now. So you want to check that social media. You want to act like a professional right now. So I try to use that to get them to understand, the expectation of behaviors that I have for them on the field, off the field, and in their social media, because we know now that one tweet, one picture is worth a million words. So that's some of the things that I do in my work.
Yeah, good advice for all students, that employers, whether they be future athletics employers or other types of employers, are looking at your digital footprint. So any of you, I think, but maybe I'll focus this to DT first, and then I'd love to hear what you all also think. So we think about student athletes' time, like, is there some kind of ideal balance between focusing on activities for sports, spending time on academics, tests, thinking about kind of mindset skills around confidence, and then like social life and engagement in campus life? Like, is there any way of creating some formula to help students both make the most of their time as well as be effective on the field?
All right. So the NCAA has rules at different levels of how much time you could spend on practice, game film, and work with the students in that area. But as far as study hall and academics, yeah, the balance is an ongoing struggle, because students have other things going on in their lives. And then you have to add in one of the biggest things that I've learned is sleep time, because athletes are tired. So they may have a morning off from football practice or basketball or hockey, whatever the case. But that doesn't mean that they have the whole day off or they're not off from studying or something like that. So they're always on. I never forget, I had a football player say to me, I played football all my life, but I've never lived football like I do right now. And he was just so tired because, you're watching film at night, you're watching film on Sunday morning. You play a game on Saturday, you have film on Sunday morning at 11. All other students don't have that. When we talk about sleeping and traveling time, I think back to March Madness over this past year, where Luke May from the University of North Carolina, he made the game-winning shot against Kentucky, and then he showed up for his 8 a.m. class and got a standing ovation. It was great that he got the standing ovation, but I'm sure he was extremely tired from playing that type of game. So, professors, let's say faculty and student affairs have to work together, because what student affairs may want, as far as some time off, and what coaches may want may not be the same thing that faculty members may give the student. So there has to be some collaboration so that the students can completely be off sometimes and unplug from being an athlete. They also need some time for what I call in between the curriculum. And that's visiting with professors during their office hours, group projects with classmates, having time to study with somebody that's not on the football team or not on their designated team. So they need some time for that, and to get involved with different organizations, because these can help, the things that they learn from those clubs and organizations can help them in other areas of their life as a student. So the balance needs to be a collaborative effort from all parties in the school to say, this is what our athletes need at this institution. And that's what I said in the beginning, you got to find the model that works at your school.
Great. So, Scott, do you have some thoughts on this as far as students and time?
Well, you know what? The NCAA comes out with a study every 5 to 6 years, and it's called the Goals Study. And one of the really interesting findings is exactly what DT is talking about. One of the big problems is sleep. It's sleep, okay? It's a significant issue. The NCAA has identified that. Now, so just this past year at the NCAA convention, they made some rules changes to begin to give athletes a little bit more time after the season so that they could decompress. Okay, so they can be people too. Now, you're going to ask me, it's not enough time, but it's a beginning of a process of a recognition through research that there has been an identified problem of sleep and the ability for an athlete to function at the highest levels of the NCAA. It's across the NCAA, but it's really interesting how the NCAA has finally identified this issue that everybody's known about for years, but now they're beginning to deal with it and beginning to create some rules to help to instruct coaches to allow the athletes to have a life outside of practice, outside of games. And we're talking, there's just too much time spent for athletes traveling. And that's where you all come in as advisors, trying to assist them on the road to complete their studies. And most other don't have that challenge. Most other students can go to an academic center if they wanted to, or find a tutor if they wanted to. But the NCAA mandates that athletes be on track to graduate over a specific period of time. You have to finish a specific amount of credits every single term. And most students who aren't athletes can choose how many credits they want to take. But not athletes. Athletes are required to take specific amount of credits every single term to be on track to graduate. Otherwise, they lose their eligibility. And that's a challenge, and that impacts sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think sleep is one of those skills and competencies that adults can probably, as I think about my own schedule. And Katie, I think part of what we're talking about is athletes learning some lifelong skills and competencies through their participation in sports. beyond maybe understanding how sleep is important, like what else would you say are some of those things that sports teaches our students?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the big things that Northeastern stresses in particular is having well-rounded, well-developed students. And I know that's a big part because of our co-op program, so that students are still expected to build skills towards having careers either directly after college or after they get out of professional sports. So one of the things that we help students to do is identify their broad academic goals and their broad motivations for being here, both academically and athletically. And then our class really helps break down these overarching goals so that students can apply them to things like exam preparation and active participation in class. But really, they're building up these broad areas that make them just well-rounded people, like time management and collaboration, communicating, learning how to network with other people who are outside of athletics, and certainly perseverance and discipline. That's the backbone of most sports, but we're seeing that having the practice of being disciplined and having to persevere when you don't win a game is translating into better study skills, persevering when you get a bad grade, or if you don't get that job offer, what are you going to do? So we're really seeing that that's helping our student athletes have more perspective for beyond just the time that they're at Northeastern playing their sport to translating into having career goals.
Derek, as an athletic director, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I believe that athletics is an extension of the classroom. So I think there's a lot of things that can be learned through sport: accountability, teamwork, communication. All those are great things. But I think if we all look at kind of how we've moved along in our careers, we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. And athletics, as an athlete, you're constantly putting yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable. And whether you fail or you overcome that, that's a great learning experience, and that's a way to take a huge step forward. So I think that's probably one of the greatest things that a student athlete can learn through sport is to learn how to be comfortable while they're uncomfortable. So I just wanted to piggyback on some of the comments about some of the issues on sleep, and made me think of another issue. And that was a few years back, we started hearing about hunger issues with our athletes. You know, we're a non-scholarship level. We don't have residence halls. We can't provide food other than at athletic contests. And so we're learning that we have students coming in for an 8 a.m. class, and they may live 30 minutes away. And they have practice at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and they're there all day and maybe haven't eaten. And so while there are some bylaws in place that would prevent us from handling this issue, specifically with athletes, it led us to learning that there was a bigger issue on campus, and that this was a campus-wide issue. There were a lot of students who were going without food, and it eventually led to a food bank on campus. So I think that's another good example of different offices, different departments on campus working together to benefit our students.
Awesome, great example. Gina, tell me what your thoughts are, and then kind of wrap us up. We'll go to final thoughts next.
Yeah, so I think, when we're thinking about students' identity as an athlete, and that might just be one component of their college experience, I think going back to what a lot of people have said is really making those relationships on campus with student affairs, with advising, general advising. For example, we bring career development actually to our building, the athletic building, and have them work with students, and we'll structure it for different years. So we'll have freshmen do some sort of value assessment to help them figure out majors that would work for them. And then we'll do resume editing or cover letters, and also just the job search for seniors. We're lucky, like Katie said, our co-op is a really big part, and we work with all students that want to do co-op. And if they can't fit it in or haven't had a chance, then we try to also bridge that gap and let them do an internship over the summer, and we're really trying to work and have them build those skills and really make them as well-rounded as possible. But I think just educating the advisors and student affairs on what the needs of the student athletes are can really help, so that they can work together and collaborate and, you know, promote both sides and get student athletes out and into other areas, and then vice versa, and getting, you know, campus also supporting the student athletes.
Yeah, that relates to an article that I read on a CBS Sports website that talked about a student saying the hot topics aren't whether athletes should be paid or not, but how we are prepared for our careers outside of athletics. So access to internships, you know, information about career readiness, which may help those students as well. So we'll see if we can tweet out the link to that article as well. So final thoughts. Let's go around and have kind of takeaways, final thoughts, and then any resources. I know we always like to end on Student Affairs Live with ways that folks can continue the conversation or get more information. So if you have an article, book, a YouTube video, or conference that's coming up that you'd like to refer folks to, that would be great. Katie, we're going to start with you.
So I think the biggest takeaway that we really want for people to have is the idea of partnership. Your student athlete advisor might be the point person, but that means that they're the ones who end up having to partner with all the different resources around campus. And we're really fortunate that that partnership was really facilitated through our just general department setup.
Piggybacking on that, I think as somebody who didn't come at it from a sports and athletic background, actually being asked to come into the student athlete support service office really helped me get a different perspective on things. And I think that invitation to be a part of the athletic experience, athletic advising experience, changes your perspective on what you need to do to help support those students, and certainly gives you a different perspective of the weight that's put on those students and on their advisors, because I think those advisors also are responsible for a great deal of, or a great amount of information. So I think being on the well, for our office at SAS, being invited in, taking that opportunity to invite us in made a difference in the way I approach my students now, and the way I partner with the advisors.
Gina?
Yeah, I think from the student athlete advisor side, don't be afraid to reach out. You know, everyone is very busy, but you never know what kind of partnerships or relationships that you'll be able to build. We make sure to go to our small and large group advising with general advisors, and that also really helps for them to understand the specific demands, and also helps when you need to call someone up and talk to them and they have that face, and it's easier just to build those relationships.
Cool. DT, final thoughts, resources?
I would say what I want people to take away is to build those relationships using that second career language. That is huge when you're talking to athletes. Ask them about what's their second career going to be, because it opens the door for you to really talk to them about their aspirations for life. We know that all athletes are going to need a second career, no matter if you go pro for 1 year, 10 years. Most of our predominant sports aren't sports that you can retire in your 60s, unless you're playing like golf, and that, you know, that works. But encourage athletes that they can build both career opportunities while in college. Each recruiting class is going to be different. So if you have a task force that is working on these resources for students, you have to have some flexibility from year to year. And last but not least, cross-departmental collaboration is important, because we all know that teamwork makes the dream work.
Awesome. Derek?
I like what a lot of others said. I really think the communication is very important. we all want our students to succeed, and when we might not know an issue is an issue, and so I think it's important for all departments across campus to understand that because if they're missing class, and coach might be mad, they might sit down, but don't be afraid of that. You know, let us know so we can handle that situation and better prepare that student.
Great. Scott, final thoughts?
You know what? My dissertation was actually on building cross-campus relationships to assist college athletes. That was my dissertation. And
ProQuest your dissertation.
yeah. So everybody's right. A couple of bad apples spoils the bunch. But let's not forget that most athletes are typically, they're pretty successful. They're going to be successful people because they want to be. And they use the sport as motivation to be successful in their lives. And so all of you, you understand student development, you understand the identity of athletes and the preeminent identity that they have as playing a sport. And so understanding how we can use our vast resources across campus to assist them to be successful and to implement policies for them to be successful, it should be a priority. And many colleges, Northeastern's a leader. Northeastern does it right. So I'm gratified to be on a panel of people from Northeastern, but other campuses can learn from those examples, and we all can learn. And so that's my thought, building cross-campus relationships. That's critical to success.
Awesome. That's a great theme to end on. And we are in the process, Alex is in the process of tweeting out a whole bunch of resources from today's episode. So thank you, Alex, for that. And I just want to, as we end, kind of thank our panelists. Preston, we missed you. Hopefully he gets an opportunity to watch the episode as well. We're definitely missing a coach's perspective, but appreciate all of you for taking time out of your day to share your thoughts on supporting student athletes. Also, thanks to our program sponsors, ACPA and M. Stoner. As I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, coming up in 2 weeks on September 6th on Student Affairs Live, I think that's 2 weeks from now, I will be back with a panel talking about racist violence, Charlottesville, and impacts on higher education. So please stay tuned to our hashtag or subscribe to the Higher Ed Live newsletter to receive announcements about this and other episodes. Again, I'm Heather Shea. Thanks again for our panelists and for this great topic today, and to everyone who's watching. Make it a great week, everyone.